Hey listeners, before we dive into today's episode, we want to hear from you.
We are doing a special Bible Answers episode in December, and we want to tackle the questions you've been wondering about from the last 16 seasons, whether it's something you've been curious about for years or something that just came in your own reading. Nothing is off limits.
Head over to BibleBookClubPodcast.com/contact. Fill out the contact form and send us your question. And here's the fun part. If we choose your question for the episode, our producer Haley will reach out to get your sweatshirt size because we're sending you a BBC sweatshirt as a thank you.
So this is your chance, and have fun with this one. We can't wait to hear what's on your mind.
And hopefully we can answer it.
We will be able to answer it. And now, today's episode. This is the Bible Book Club,
the book of Nehemiah.
Welcome to the club. Last episode, in chapter 4 of Nehemiah, we covered 2 forms of opposition. These are the strategies the enemy used to keep Nehemiah from building that wall, to try to keep Nehemiah from building that wall. The first was ridicule, a form of opposition that can lead to us losing heart. Sanballat and Tobiah used ridicule to try to discourage the small Israelite community from believing that they could accomplish this build. Nehemiah would not have it. He prayed and continued building. The second was threats, a form of opposition that can lead to fear. The contingency against the Israelites grew to the point where Jerusalem was surrounded and the enemy planned an attack. Well, Nehemiah was not having that either. He prayed and prepared for battle, but he never stopped the building.
In this episode, we will learn 4 more tactics to battle 4 more types of opposition, while at the same time taking care of a little community governance. Scene 1, the opposition attacks with conflict. Internal conflict is a form of opposition that divides. When the enemy fails in creating enough opposition from without, he goes to work stirring up opposition from within.
Nehemiah chapter 5. Now the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Some were saying, "We and our sons and daughters are numerous. In order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain." Others were saying, "We are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine." Still others were saying, "We have had to borrow money to pay the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. Although we are of the same flesh and blood as our fellow Jews, and though our children are as good as theirs, yet we have to subject our sons and daughters to slavery. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we are powerless because our fields and our vineyards belong to others."
While focused on opposition outside the wall, internal opposition developed within the walls. The people are falling apart. They were weary. They were physically exhausted from building the wall and standing watch on the wall. And they were emotionally exhausted from the threat of war lurking maliciously beyond the wall. To make matters worse, the economy had become strained. The city was overcrowded and food was scarce. Those who had land were mortgaging houses, fields, and vineyards to buy food. Others were borrowing to pay taxes on their already mortgaged land. And some had fallen so far financially that they were using their children to pay off debt. Now, this was not slavery as we know it, but it was close. These sons and daughters were more like indentured servants. They were unpaid laborers working to pay off their family's debt. Unfortunately, it sounds as if there was some abuse of the system, and the conditions were beginning to resemble slavery as we know it. The wealthy Israelites were exploiting their own people. How could this happen? Moses had given specific laws about lending, servitude, and slavery. Slavery in Egypt was what Moses had fought to free the Israelites from. One of his commands on the subject was that the people should lend money without interest.
Exodus 22:25. If you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not treat it like a business deal. Charge no interest.
The laws also heavily regulated debt servitude to prevent it from becoming slavery. First, it was to be of a limited duration.
Exodus 2:2. If you buy a Hebrew servant, He is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year, he shall go free without paying anything.
Second, the servant could be redeemed at any time if someone could settle the remaining debt.
Leviticus 25, starting in verse 47. If a foreigner residing among you becomes rich, and any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to the foreigner or to a member of the foreigner's clan, they retain the right of redemption after they have sold themselves. One of their relatives may redeem them. An uncle or a cousin or any blood relative in their clan may redeem them. Or if they prosper, they may redeem themselves.
Third, they were to be treated as hired workers, not slaves, and could not be ruthlessly ruled over.
Leviticus 25, starting in verse 39. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to you, do not make them work as slaves. They are to be treated as hired workers or temporary residents among you. They are to work for you until the year of Jubilee. Then they and their children are to be released, and they will go back to their own clans and to the property of their ancestors. Because the Israelites are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt, they must not be sold as slaves. Do not rule over them ruthlessly, but fear your God.
The returned Israelite exiles either had never learned or had chosen to ignore Moses' laws. The abuse from the well-to-do nobles, along with the people's fatigue, stress, debt, and poverty, created internal conflict. Internal conflict is a form of opposition that divides. It divides nations, churches, and families. And Nehemiah was not having it.
Back to our story in Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 6. When I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind and then accused the nobles and officials. I told them, you are charging your own people interest. So I called together a large meeting to deal with them and said, as far as possible, we have bought back our fellow Jews who were sold to the Gentiles. Now you are selling your own people only for them to be sold back to us. They kept quiet because they could find nothing to say. So I continued, what you are doing is not right. Shouldn't you walk in fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies? I and my brothers and my men are also lending the people money and grain, but let us stop charging interest. Give back to them immediately their fields, vineyards, olive groves, and houses, and also the interest you are charging them, 1% of the money, grain, new wine, and olive oil. We will give it back, they said, and we will not demand anything more from them. We will do as you say. Then I summoned the priests and made the nobles and officials take an oath to do what they had promised. I also shook out the folds of my robe and said, in this way, may God shake out of their house and possessions anyone who does not keep this promise. So may such a person be shaken out and emptied. At this, the whole assembly said, Amen, and praised the Lord. And the people did as they promised.
Nehemiah was righteously angry. However, unlike Ezra, who also uncovered some law-breaking Israelites in our last season, Nehemiah does not pull his hair out or fall into paralysis. Nehemiah does what I would like to do more of in tough situations. He pondered. Nehemiah does not react to what happens around him. He gets mad, but his anger does not distract him or blind him. He ponders. In other words, he carefully considers his words and actions. Then Nehemiah makes his case. He goes first to those at the top, the nobles and officials, and it says he deals with them, which I would have liked to have witnessed because the man is a force, and I could use a few tips in this area. The guilty nobles and officials are speechless because what could they say? Nehemiah continues by challenging them to stop. He and his brothers are lending without interest. Therefore, they should do the same, and he commands them to give it all back. The fields, vineyards, the olive groves, and the houses. He tells them to forgive all the debt and return the collateral. And they do it. Nehemiah ends by shaking out his robes, illustrating the curse that would befall anyone who didn't follow through. Those people should be shaken out of their precious wealth and fall to nothing. Scene 2. Nehemiah leads by example.
Verse 14, moreover, from the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, until his 32nd year, 12 years, neither I nor my brothers ate the food allotted to the governor. But the earlier governors, those preceding me, placed a heavy burden on the people and took 40 shekels of silver from them in addition to the food and wine. Their assistants also lorded it over the people. But out of reverence for God, I did not act like that. Instead, I devoted myself to the work on this wall. All my men were assembled there for the work. We did not acquire any land. Furthermore, 150 Jews and officials ate at my table, as well as those who came to us from the surrounding nations. Each day, 1 ox, 6 choice sheep, and some poultry were prepared for me, and every 10 days an abundant supply of wine of all kinds. In spite of all this, I never demanded the food allotted to the governor because the demands were heavy on these people. Remember me with favor, my God, for all I have done for these people.
During this time period, governors had a food allowance. The allowance was money that the people paid to support their leader. It wasn't corruption, it was part of the deal. However, the governors before Nehemiah had been taking advantage. They required food, wine, and 40 shekels of silver, and the people were poor. Nehemiah states that he did not take this allowance out of reverence for God. He gave up a right as governor to do what was right for God. Not only did Nehemiah give up the perks of being governor, he personally worked on the wall instead of relaxing back at the office. And he personally funded the 150 people that ate regularly with him. He hosted, fed, and cared for the people out of his own pocket. Nehemiah had perceived the situation. The people were poor, and he pondered his options, and he chose God's way. It wasn't the easy way. There would be no earthly reward for it. But his last words say it all. Remember me with favor, my God. And there it is, favor, one of my favorite words. So many great Bible characters made favor with God their goal. There is no earthly prize greater than to find favor with our Father in heaven. Scene 3, the opposition attacks with temptation. Temptation is a form of opposition that distracts.
Nehemiah chapter 6. When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I had rebuilt the wall and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors in the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me. So I sent messengers to them with this reply. I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer.
Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem will not give up, and they are desperate. The wall is complete except for the gates. Once the gates are up, Jerusalem will be secure. I can almost imagine their panic, like, how did we let this lowly little group get this far? Their only hope to stop Israel's momentum is to bring down the man behind the wall, Nehemiah. This is genius manipulation, actually. They invite Nehemiah to a friendly meeting, a chance to get on the same page, discuss things in Ono. However, their choice of location demonstrated their stupidity. Ono was hardly a neutral location because it was near Sanballat's Samaria, making it an ideal place to plan an ambush on Nehemiah. Nehemiah is too smart to fall for something like that. It also was a day's travel away, which would remove Nehemiah from the city for 2 or 3 days. They could kill Nehemiah in Ono and at the same time have someone else attack the city. Nehemiah is not having it. The scheme echoes Satan's temptations of Jesus in Matthew 4. Nehemiah says he won't go down to their meeting. Satan told Jesus to throw himself down from the mountain, and Jesus said he wouldn't go down either. Nehemiah was not fooled and therefore not tempted. He was not distracted from his work. He didn't waste time trying to figure out what they were up to. He didn't waste energy worrying about his life. He just moved on and went back to work. 4 times they asked, and 4 times he dismissed their deception. Nehemiah was focused on God's work, and everything else was not worth pondering. Scene 4. The opposition attacks with lies. Lying is a form of opposition that creates confusion.
Nehemiah chapter 6, continuing in verse 5. Then the 5th time Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter in which was written, "It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it is true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king, and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king, so come, let us meet together." I sent him this reply: "Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You are making it up out of your head." They were all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will get too weak for the work and it will not be completed. But I prayed, "Now strengthen my hands."
The 5th invitation was more overt. Sanballat did not seal the letter, in the hopes that others would read it on its way to Nehemiah and spread seeds of doubt about Nehemiah throughout Jerusalem. In the letter, Sanballat accused him of planning a revolt against the king and of planning to become king himself. I am sure many people did read the letter. At this time, letters were the only form of communication and changed many hands on the way to their recipient. An open letter would have been an open invitation to read. Nehemiah never even gave a thought to who might have seen the lies. It would take too much time from his work.
So basically, they just started a rumor about him that wasn't true.
Right. They said all these lies in the letter, knowing that all these people would read it, and it would create confusion, doubt about Nehemiah. One of the hardest things in life is to ignore liars and the people who slander us. But if we become too concerned with how people perceive us, what we do, what we believe, and we endlessly try to respond to them, we will drive ourselves mad and waste a lot of time and energy. Nehemiah recognized this attempt for what it was, a desperate effort to create confusion and doubt amongst the Israelites, and he was not having it. He is almost disdainful in his response to them, like, "You are ridiculous and making this up in your head." There is a Nehemiah lesson for us, crucial to our generation. We have access to so much information about friends, community, the nation, the world. All that information is a temptation. We can be drawn into the point that we are wasting time and energy on navigating truth, lies, and opinion. In the end, it distracts us from the work in front of us, the very things we can do something about. The lesson is to determine how to avoid distracting drama. Nehemiah saw the attempt for what it was, an attempt to create confusion and doubt that would drain him, an attempt from the opposition to take him away from where God wanted him, on the wall. So where do you get your information, and how much time do you spend there? Is it a healthy amount of information and time? Or are you spiraling out into conspiracy theories about people and the world, to the point that you are confused and losing your trust in humanity? We must take our eyes off the world and look up to God in trust. He is the author of truth, and that truth is written out for us in his word, the Bible. Scene 5. The opposition attacks Nehemiah personally. Personal attacks are a form of opposition that destroys credibility.
Verse 10. One day I went to the house of Shemaiah, son of Delilah, the son of Mehetabel, who was shut in at his home. He said, "Let us meet in the house of God inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors, because men are coming to kill you. By night they are coming to kill you." But I said, "Should a man like me run away? Or should someone like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go." I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He had been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, my God, because of what they had done. Remember also the prophet Noadiah and how she and the rest of the prophets have been trying to intimidate me.
The opposition is getting personal. Why? Sanballat and Tobiah have been personally humiliated. They have failed over and over again to thwart Nehemiah. Therefore, their anger burns against him. Forget the wall. In revenge, they want to destroy the man. Sanballat and Tobiah's strategy is to discredit Nehemiah in his leadership and faith. Nehemiah has been the driving force behind the people's growing faith. His example is exemplary, and they want to bring him down, hoping to bring down the revival of Jerusalem. So they hire a prophet named Shemaiah. Now, Shemaiah is confined to his home, a detail that explains why Nehemiah goes to him. It also makes the prophet appear more isolated and believable. Shemaiah is the son of Delaiah, who is mentioned in Ezra 2:59. In the list of exiles who returned but could not show that their families were descended from Israel. So he may have been from a priestly line, and he may not. His legitimacy is somewhat suspect, which makes him a good hire for the opposition. Shemaiah's plan sounded like prophecy directly from God. In reality, the message was a cleverly fear-based trap. Shemaiah was using his own credibility as a prophet to get Nehemiah to believe that his death was imminent. Then Shemaiah wanted Nehemiah to believe that God had given Shemaiah a plan for his protection. Shemaiah offered this solution as if he were a partner in protecting Nehemiah. He said, "Let us meet in the temple and close the doors." And he implied that it was okay and that he was going to do it too. Nehemiah was not having it. He cannot be fooled into being foolish. He knows God's laws. The temple was sacred. Only priests were allowed in the temple, and Nehemiah was not a priest. If he were found there, the temple guards would arrest him or possibly kill him on the spot. Either way, Nehemiah's leadership would come to an end. His sin would discredit him, and all he had worked for would be at risk. Sanballat and Tobiah know this. They are no longer trying to kill him with words or swords. They are trying to kill him with the law of his own God at the hands of his own people. The point for us is this. While Shemaiah was a prophet, and his plan may have sounded like prophecy, it wasn't, because it contradicted the word of God. Nehemiah knew it was a trap because he knew God's laws. But in the same situation, would we? People, even believers, may give you advice that has not been run through the filter of the Bible. We must know the word, or how to search the word to avoid a fall. So says Psalm 119, which was most likely written by David, another man who loved the Lord like Nehemiah and was chased by opposition. For him, it was King Saul.
Psalm 119, starting in verse 9. How can a young person stay on the path of purity? By living according to your word. I seek you with all my heart. Do not let me stray from your commands. I have hidden your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. Praise be to you, Lord. Teach me your decrees. With my lips, I recount all the laws that come from your mouth. I rejoice in following your statutes as one rejoices in great riches. I meditate on your precepts and consider your ways. I delight in your decrees. I will not neglect your word.
When David was running from Saul, he was often tempted to sin. He had the chance to kill Saul, but it would have been a sin because Saul was anointed by God. Same thing for Nehemiah. He could have run to the temple and hid, but he knew it would be a sin, even though it was a temptation to save himself. The Bible will keep us focused. It will teach us discernment. The ability to know if something is from God or the opposition is in the Word of God. Nehemiah knew right away, for he doesn't even hesitate. Personal attacks are a form of opposition that destroy credibility. The solution to overcoming personal attacks is discernment. Over the last 2 episodes, we have covered 6 types of opposition: ridicule, threats, internal conflict, temptation, lies, and personal attacks. Ridicule is a form of opposition that can lead to losing heart. Threats are a form of opposition that can lead to fear. Internal conflict is a form of opposition that divides. Temptation is a form of opposition that distracts. Lies are a form of opposition that create confusion. Personal attacks are a form of opposition that destroy credibility. All 6 are very much alive today. Every single one of them has the same purpose: to distract you from God. The enemy wants to tear down that wall you are building with faith, and the faith you may be building in others. Why? Because we aren't just in a battle with temptation from the opposition. We are in a battle for our witness, our credibility as believers. We are in a battle to be a light in the darkness. The solution is to discern and dissent, to recognize and resist. Do what Nehemiah would do. This is where Nehemiah's pattern of P's comes back into play. What would he do? He would pray for strength to stop. He would perceive what is actually happening. He would ponder a better response. He would plan a way out of it. He would prepare for the opposition. You can be victorious over temptations that discredit you, your faith, and your work. You do not have to be defeated by ridicule. You do not have to be paralyzed by threats. You do not have to be divided by internal conflict. You do not have to be destroyed by personal attacks. You can overcome the opposition. The Lord will give you the strength. The last thing he wants is for his people to lose heart, fear, become divided, and lose their credibility. He has called us to be a light to the world. He has given us Nehemiah as an example. We can do this if we build the wall of our faith.
We are so grateful you're here. Thanks for reading along, geeking out with us, and being a part of the Bible Book Club. You are the reason we do this. New episodes drop every Monday.